Your sister made partner while you play entrepreneur, Dad announced to everyone. That's when Mom's phone buzzed. Why is your company valued at $1 billion in the Wall Street Journal? The room went silent. Hey Reddit. I grew up in a household where respect was conditional and usually reserved for those who followed the family blueprint. My dad was a high-ranking corporate attorney. My mom was a real estate broker with a flair for expensive taste, and my older sister Emily practically exited the womb holding a law degree. I, on the other hand, was the kid who painted rocks and tried to sell them as paperweights at age 7. Even then they joked I was wasting my time on silly hobbies. While Emily went off to an Ivy League school and landed a job at a prestigious firm right after graduation, I took a different path. I majored in graphic design, then spent a couple of years couch surfing, freelancing, and teaching myself code late into the night. To my parents, that was the equivalent of announcing I had decided to pursue professional clowning. Every dinner, every holiday, every group call, there was always a jab, always a dig. So when I skipped grad school and used the last $3,000 in my savings to rent a corner in a shared co-working space, Dad said I was just playing entrepreneur. That was his favorite line, playing like I was a child trying on her mom's heels. Emily made partner at her firm at 31. The celebration was extravagant. Black tie. Champagne flown in from France. Dad gave a toast that ended with the words, "Some people take the straight path to success. Others get lost in side streets." I wasn't invited to speak. What they didn't know was that in those same side streets I was quietly building something real. It started with an idea I had during the pandemic. I noticed how many small local businesses were struggling with managing online orders, deliveries, and customer engagement. They either couldn't afford high-end SaaS tools or had no idea how to use them. So I started developing a simplified back-end platform designed specifically for small brick-and-mortar stores. I called it Haven Card. I cold emailed, cold called, pitched in Facebook groups. I got laughed at, ignored, or ghosted 99 times out of 100, but that 1 out of 100 kept me going. Within the first year I had 20 clients paying a modest subscription fee. I reinvested everything, lived on ramen and instant coffee, and kept building. By year 3 I had 2 full-time employees, both former freelancers like me. We didn't have funding, but we had traction. And when one of our beta clients, a small bookstore chain in Portland, got acquired, the buyer was so impressed with our back-end system that they asked who built it. That's how we got our first major partnership offer, but I never bragged. I never brought any of this to family dinners. I'd learned my lesson. When I once casually mentioned a successful pilot project, Dad smirked and said, "Let us know when you're in the Wall Street Journal." Then came Christmas. I flew home reluctantly, staying in a hotel instead of the house just to avoid tension. The whole family was there: Emily, her fiancé, my parents, even my aunt and uncle. The table was long and formal with name cards and gold napkin rings. My spot was closest to the kitchen. Classic. The conversation was exactly what I expected. "Emily just made partner, did you know? Aunt Kathy." Dad beamed as he went on about her salary, her corner office, the client she brought in. Then he turned to me, "And what about you? Still playing entrepreneur?" I smiled politely. "Just keeping busy." He chuckled and raised his glass. "Your sister made partner while you play entrepreneur," he announced loud enough for the whole table to hear. Everyone laughed except me. I glanced at Mom. She looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Emily gave me a look of pity which somehow felt worse than the ridicule. I was about to excuse myself when Mom's phone buzzed. She picked it up, looked at the screen, then frowned. "Why is your company in the Wall Street Journal?" The room froze. "What?" She looked up, eyes wide. "Haven Cart, right? It says here that Haven Cart just closed a Series B round at a $1 billion valuation. Is that your company?" Dad blinked. Emily's fork hit her plate. My uncle cleared his throat awkwardly. I nodded. "Yeah. That's mine. You built that, built it, grew it, and still run it. We just onboarded our 10,000th client last week." The silence was surreal. For the first time in my life they were speechless. No sarcasm. No mockery. Just stunned faces. Emily was the first to recover, asking something about market share, but she sounded more like she was grasping than genuinely curious. Mom's hands were shaking slightly as she handed me the phone. The article was real. My face, my name. The funding news. Dad didn't speak for the rest of the night. I left before dessert. Back at my hotel, I sat on the edge of the bed and felt nothing at first. Then it hit me. I hadn't needed their validation. Not anymore. But finally getting it and seeing them speechless felt like a release. Years of being the black sheep, the dreamer, the disappointment, all gone in the blink of an article. But the fallout didn't stop there. The next day I got a long formal email from Dad. He wanted to talk, said he may have underestimated me and hoped we could meet one-on-one. Mom sent a photo of the dinner table from that night with a caption, "Proud of you." Even Emily called me, though her tone was stiff. She said she had clients who might benefit from my platform and wanted to know if I'd be open to a professional referral arrangement. Like we were equals now. But something had shifted in me. After a lifetime of chasing their respect, I suddenly realized I didn't need it. Not anymore. I had built something lasting on my own terms with no shortcuts or family handouts. Still, part of me was curious. What exactly did Dad want? Why now? What did he expect? So I agreed to meet him for coffee before my flight home. He showed up in a tailored coat, looking older than I remembered. Less certain. I read the article 3 times, he said, sipping his drink slowly. You really did it. I just nodded. He leaned forward. I was wrong about you. It felt like a confession. But there was something in his eyes, a calculation maybe. A flicker of strategic thinking, the same look he had when negotiating contracts or court settlements. I heard you haven't signed with a legal firm yet for your company's compliance work. There it was. Even now, even after all the years of belittling me, he saw an opportunity. Not a daughter, a client. I smiled, then stood up. I'll think about it. But in my gut I knew the answer. Because sometimes success doesn't just make the room go silent. It makes you realize who is never really listening in the first place. After that coffee with Dad, I flew back to San Francisco with a strange clarity. For once the air didn't feel heavy. There was no more second-guessing, no more quiet wish for a phone call or a proud smile. I had already won, not against them but for myself. And yet the game wasn't over. Not for them. Over the next few weeks, the ripple effects of Haven Cart's funding news reached far beyond my family's dinner table. Old college acquaintances popped up in my inbox. Investors who once ghosted me now wanted a quick conversation. I even got an email from a VC who had laughed me out of a pitch meeting 2 years ago. He called it a misunderstanding and asked if I'd be interested in a strategic partnership. I archived it without reading past the 3rd line. Then came the real twist. Dad emailed again. This time it wasn't just about legal services. He had attached a 14-page proposal. His firm wanted to represent Haven Cart as our primary counsel. They'd even waive a year of retainer fees. At the end of the email he wrote, I know our relationship has been complicated, but this is purely professional. I believe I can help you now. I almost laughed. The man who had spent a decade mocking my work was now asking for a seat at the table, my table. I forwarded the email to our current counsel and flagged it. I had already hired a smaller but incredibly sharp legal team who actually believed in my company when we were barely covering payroll. I wasn't about to drop them for optics or blood ties. I didn't respond to Dad's offer. 2 days later Emily called. You're being cold, she said bluntly. Dad's trying to make amends. He's trying to win a client, I corrected. He respects you now. No. He respects what I built. There's a difference. She sighed. He's not good with emotions. You know that. But he's proud of you. I almost believed her. But then she added, also I was wondering if you'd be open to a feature in my firm's monthly industry profile. We do a spotlight on successful tech founders and it would be good exposure. And if clients see the family connection, well, it helps both of us. There it was again. They hadn't changed. They just shifted strategies. I wasn't a failure anymore. I was a potential asset, a bragging point, a PR tool, but they still couldn't see me outside the context of their own reputations. I told Emily I'd think about it. I didn't. Instead, I did something else. Our company had just leased a new office downtown. It was a big step up, top floor, natural light, open plan design. I invited my team to a launch party and asked them to bring family and friends. We catered it with local vendors, businesses we'd helped grow through Haven Cart. I gave a short speech about what it meant to start from nothing and build something with meaning. There were cheers, laughter, even a few tears. And my family, they weren't there not because I didn't invite them, because I didn't need them there. But word travels fast. A week later, Mom called. "You threw a launch party." I could hear the edge in her voice. "We did. It was great. Very personal. Various. I would have liked to have been there. Would you? Or would it have been another chance to remind me how I used to be the family disappointment?" She went quiet. "That's not fair," she finally said. No. What wasn't fair was years of being treated like I was wasting my life. There was silence again. And then she said the words I hadn't expected. "Your father's furious." That made me laugh. Why? Because I didn't hire him to be my lawyer? Or because his playing entrepreneur daughter just made her first Forbes list? "You know how he is," she said defensively. "You could still fix things." I'm not interested in fixing something they only care about now that there's a dollar sign next to it. 2 weeks passed. Then came the final nail. I got a certified letter from my father's law firm. It was a cease and desist. Apparently they were claiming that Havencart's trademark was too similar to a retail tool his firm had once represented years ago. Total nonsense. A desperate last-ditch play. I forwarded it to my legal team, who nearly laughed themselves out of their chairs. "This is retaliatory and flimsy as hell," my lead counsel said. "You want us to crush it or play polite?" I paused. "Crush it." We filed a counterclaim exposing the conflict of interest, pointed out that the firm had actually tried to court us after the supposed infringement and submitted evidence of bad faith behavior. The court dismissed their complaint entirely with prejudice. That letter was the last time my father tried to involve himself in my business. He never emailed again. A month later, I heard through Emily that he'd been reprimanded by the partners at his firm for trying to weaponize a client relationship out of a personal grudge. His pride had backfired in the one place he valued more than home, his reputation. Emily's tone was different now, meager. She started talking about burnout, about pressure, about how maybe she envied me a little. I listened, but I didn't offer advice. I wasn't her project to dissect anymore. I was just her sister, the one she never really saw until headlines forced her to. A year later, I was invited to give a keynote at a major tech conference. The theme: the power of being underestimated. I told my story not out of revenge, but as proof that you don't need permission to build something extraordinary. You don't need validation from people who only understand success when it comes with a degree or a nameplate. After the speech, a young woman approached me. "I was always told I wasn't serious enough to run a business," she said. "But hearing you, I think maybe I don't need their permission." I smiled. "You don't. You just need your own." As I walked off stage, I felt lighter. Not vindicated. Not angry. Just free. They had mocked me. They had dismissed me. They had tried to weaponize pride against progress. But in the end, they taught me the most important lesson of all. When the people who claim to love you only support success, they can understand the real victory isn't making them proud. It's learning you never needed them to be.